I was just listening to the wonderful life coach, spiritual teacher, Michael Neal, who was talking about the difference between strategy and planning. And he defined it, and I thought it was pretty good. A strategy is an approach, planning has to do with details. And I thought it's really important to understand the difference if you're a writer, because, look, some of us uh, outline and some of us do not. I don't outline, but my wife does. And I know a lot of friends who like to outline, and I've talked to a lot of writers who outline, but some do, some don't. But it doesn't matter whether you like to outline or not. There is no doubt that you have to have a strategy for how you're going to approach writing, because ultimately the details you receive that you find in the course of writing are going to come to you as you write. And this reminded me of when I interviewed the humorous historical writer, I guess you could describe her, Sarah Vowell. Now, I knew of Sarah Vowell not as a writer, but as a humorist who had appeared several times on The Daily Show. And I was a big fan of The Daily Show. And she was very funny when she was on it talking to Jon Stewart back in the days. And she had also been the voice of Invisigirl on The Incredibles, the Pixar film The Incredibles, because she has a unique voice. And I got to tell you, I was just a little starstruck by her because she had made me laugh and she'd been on the show that I really liked and she'd been in this movie that I quite enjoyed. So when I got ready to interview her, because I was a little intimidated, maybe, I wrote some questions out ahead of time based on the book she had written and some information I knew about her. And then the interview started, and I started asking those questions. And it occurred to me as I was asking them that they were based not on who she was, but who I thought she was. And so after about 10 minutes of this, I abandoned the questions I had written down because as she answered, I realized I didn't know who she was. And now I did, that we'd been talking, and I adjusted my questions accordingly. You see, I tried to plan out everything I was going to say to her. But in the end, it was that the plan was useless. And from that day forward, I decided unless there's some extreme case, I'm not going to write down my questions. I'm always going to wait to meet the writer and then let's see what comes to me as I meet them. That became my strategy. Show up, be present, get interested in the author, and then see what questions come to me. And that's really the same strategy I apply to writing. Show up, get interested, and then see what details come to me, whether you outline or not. And by the way, even though I don't outline, I often have an idea of what I'm going to write about. I often think, okay, if I'm writing a chapter in one of my books, I'll say, okay, I'm going to write about X, Y, and Z. I'll tell those three stories and I'll lump them together and that'll make a good chapter. But that's not a whole chapter. There's a lot of stuff I got to write that's outside of those three things that I have in my mind, this little mini outline. But this can be challenging for writers because, as you probably know, or as you have learned, the details are so important. Vladimir Nabokov said you have to caress the divine to tail, which I thought was accurate. You really got to love the details because they're what bring the story to life. If you're going to describe a room, you can't describe the whole room. You have to pick the two or three things that really capture the essence of that room, those details. That's where the energy, the specifics of detail are what give things energy. Specificity increases the momentum of energy. Lack of specificity, if I say I'm upset, that has a little bit of energy. If I say I'm upset because you didn't come home on time and you promised me you would, there's all this more energy. Specifics, details, accelerates energy. So we know as artists, details are very important. And yet, and this is the tricky part, our job isn't to know all the details. Our job is to show up, regardless of how much we outline. Show up, be present, be interested, be open, and trust the details will come. We have to trust even though we know the details are perhaps the most important part of the story. We know that they're going to bring the story to life. They will bring it to life, and yet we can't know them. We have to trust they'll come. Just like when I interview authors, I have to trust questions will come to me. It's not easy, I know, but you got to know your job. And your job is not to be in charge of all the details. It isn't, but it is your job to show up. It is your job to get interested. It is your job to be curious. It is your job to be open. And if you do your job, your muse, your source energy, whatever you call it, your imagination It will do its job and give you the details you need to bring your story to life. That's how it works. Yes, it does. So, thanks for listening. Great to see you again. One way, though it may be. If you like it, hit subscribe. You know, it's the best way to keep up. And if you liked it, say so. Hit like. That's okay. It's a good thing. Let your voice be heard. So until next week, this is Bill Kenower. Stay fearless.